Jane Velez-Mitchell for Jane Unchained here with the Boycott Meat Roundtable. We've got a whole bunch of articles that we are going to bring you, the latest breaking news from Europe. In the Netherlands, I feel worthless. Workers at slaughterhouses tell a grueling life in Dutch meat plants. And the dark underbelly of meat production in Europe is being exposed. To that end, another headline we're going to show you, and that is in Ireland, meat plants hit by the virus will not reopen in the morning. And the third one is small farmers. Okay, small farmers here in the United States, according to this Yahoo News article, NBC News, left behind in the Trump administration's COVID relief plans, which is all about what we're talking about, because when we talk about boycott meat, what we're saying is essentially a handful of giant corporations control the entire meat supply, and a lot of these small farmers are also being exploited. But first, as we look at the differing reasons why people have transitioned to plant-based, we want to show that people from all walks of life and from all backgrounds can very easily transition. To that end, we have a bodybuilder with us, an amazing bodybuilder, Ryan Nelson. You are a professional bodybuilder. You are completely ripped. You've won many, many prizes, but you started out as a hunter. Tell us about your transition to a plant-based diet for those who may not think that they're eligible, because everybody's eligible.
Yeah, I love talking about this, and it's something that I've spoke to many people about over the last, 3 years traveling around the country, talking to people about how you can transition to a plant-based diet no matter where you came from or whatever cultural, things that exist of eating animals, like Thanksgiving, for example, which is coming up. You can come from anywhere and make that transition. And for me, I came from small town Wyoming, growing up on a cattle farm where we actually raised cattle for the beef industry, which, in other terms would be the slaughtering of cows. That's what I grew up doing, and a big hunter and fisherman growing up. So that was how I grew up. And then in my early 20s, I started experimenting with what I was eating and found that I felt way better eating plant-based, and then quickly made a ethical connection that I didn't want to be a part of killing animals anymore.
So how did that impact your bodybuilding career? Because honestly, the biggest problem I had getting ready for today's show was looking at all your many, 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 many photos where you are just ripped, and realizing, darn, I can't use them because they were taken by famous magazines. So you're going to have to describe, because you are truly ripped.
Yeah. So, for me, obviously, I'm not so much concerned about the health part as I am the ethics part now in my heart. But certainly from a standpoint of my health, it was drastic in the first 3 weeks in transition, how much better I felt, how much leaner or ripped I looked, and how much better I performed in the gym, as far as endurance and being able to recover. So, for me, the health aspect is kind of secondary, but I noticed some huge leaps and bounds immediately. And certainly over time now, this Thanksgiving will be 10 years vegan. I've continued to see how my longevity and youth stays a lot better than some of the other guys that are, the same age as me. So it's been amazing for me. I wouldn't go back.
So let me ask you, because we're doing this boycott meat in solidarity with the slaughterhouse workers who are really suffering right now. I'm going to show you one photo of this poor lady who works at a slaughterhouse who is, look at her. I mean, you don't need to go any further than to describe that. So this is something that the people in Iowa have put together. This wasn't started by vegans. we actually ran into them thanks to Joe Enriquez Henry, who you're going to meet. And we decided to form a coalition with them because such terrible things are happening with these slaughterhouse workers. I mean, they are really, really, really suffering. And now the administration has tried to rob them of any protections by giving the corporations the liability protection. So they are really, in some cases, on a death march. Obviously, the slaughterhouses are hotbeds of COVID-19, and there's a ton of total articles everywhere that show that the idea of ordering these plants to remain open, even though they are terrible hotbeds of COVID-19, and workers, tens of thousands are getting sick and dying. A lot of people have said, you know what, I want to support the slaughterhouse workers, but gee, I'm not one of those people who could go plant-based. What do you say to those people, Ryan, who might even be part of these coalitions, but they kind of feel like they're not eligible to join this club? And we don't want it to be a club. We want it to be the norm. But yet there's a part of them that is just that shift, that switch is turned off. Oh, I'll support slaughterhouse workers, but gee, if you're telling me not to eat the animals, I can't be one of them vegans. Well, this is what a vegan looks like. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say to anyone that, everyone's pace is different in how they feel comfortable in making change, whether it's with nutrition or exercise or making your bed every day or whatever that may be. Everyone has a different pace. And so if that means going vegan over a month and making that transition, that's huge. If that means doing it overnight like I did, I think that's awesome too. Everyone's different. So I would just suggest, at least initially, to make small changes and then just let that snowball from there. Some really great initial changes and alternatives out there that exist are, for instance, a really popular brand, Beyond Meat, has a lot of great products out right now that are alternatives that maybe taste the same, that these people think that they can't go vegan because in their head they're saying that because they desire a taste. That is why they're saying that. So if we can then just sub in a really good tasty food alternative, we can show them there's a whole nother world that they haven't explored.
So I'd like to bring Joe Enriquez Henry into this conversation. Joe, we met, and I forget even exactly how we met, but obviously as a result of the COVID-19, I think I originally interviewed another union leader representing the slaughterhouse workers, Kim Cordoba, and then I ended up speaking to you, and you came up with this idea of Boycott Meat. You were not a vegan, but in solidarity with the slaughterhouse workers, you've been transitioning to plant-based. To Ryan's point, how is that going? And what are you discovering, Joe?
Yeah, well, Jane, thanks for asking. It's gone very well. Since May 1st, I have not had any meat whatsoever. It's been just vegetables, beans, rice, tortillas. No change whatsoever. Actually, I'm sleeping better, have lost a few pounds. I'm running more. I have more energy. I don't get those downs you get when you eat a lot of meat afterwards. So all that has gone. And clearly, I knew this when I was young. When I was young, we grew up in a poor family. We could not afford to buy meat on a regular basis. So it was normal for me to transition here. I remember those days when I was a kid. And the reality is, meat is part of the fast food industry. We don't need it. Many of us grew up not having to use it as a way to provide our daily subsistence. But yeah, things have been going great. Thank you for asking.
Well, excellent. Now, Ryan, we are part of this coalition because the slaughterhouse workers are dying. And now I want to get to my three main articles. And those articles really outline something that is very profound. And that is, and I think studies show this, For example, they show serial killers start with animals, almost always. They start torturing animals as children and then they graduate to people. Well, in the corporate matter, these companies that will kill 10,000 or 15,000 animals every day in a giant facility, according to the critics and the people who work in these slaughterhouses, they're increasingly saying they're being treated like animals. And that's actually a direct quote from this article from the Netherlands. And I'll put up the headline for you, where the workers say, quote, they're being treated like animals. Now, I don't think animals should be treated badly, but here it is. I feel worthless. Workers tell of grueling life in Dutch meat plants. The Netherlands is a food powerhouse, but its dark underbelly has been exposed due to COVID-19. Now, here's what this one worker said in the article. One worker claims he was physically pushed and grabbed by Dutch supervisors and witnessed one tell a colleague to kneel while holding leave request forms in their mouth. So that's humiliation and degradation. The company says it's not aware of such verbal abuse. We hope these workers come to us so we can get to the bottom of this. It's always what they say. But they don't care about people, said Joe, the worker, adding many felt powerless to challenge the conditions. And they go on to say that they are pushed. Even if you work 12 hours a day, they don't take you into account. They don't think you are worth anything. When it comes to the way people are treated, this is a tragedy. He described workers being humiliated and called names by managers. I've had enough. Do you feel, Joe, that with this COVID-19 exposing the horrors of the meat industry, for example, I want to go back to this article that shows, look at this. Poultry workers denied bathroom breaks, wear diapers, according to Oxfam report. That was a report that was written prior to the COVID. So these abuses have occurred for a long time, but what are your thoughts? And then I'll get Ryan, that if you're in a position, and they've done studies like this, they've put kids in charge of other kids. And when they have absolute power, they become sadistic, almost always. These corporations have absolute power over the animals that they're obviously, I mean, I don't need to show you, but just in case somebody thinks it's euthanasia, no, it's not. It's a violent, horrible death that these animals suffer. If you're doing that for a living, is it such a big leap to start degrading and torturing people?
Not at all. I mean, the type of abuse that these workers are subject to, the way in which management treats these workers reflects the way in which the animals are treated. So it's exploitation to the 10th degree. So I'm not surprised. We've heard about this for quite a long time. I've been working with the slaughterhouse workers for the last 5 years. We've heard these stories about people having to wear diapers, about people passing out on the line for many years. Due to the virus, though, the exploitation has been exposed about what's going on at these plants. And of course, this was happening 40 years ago, too, with workers, especially those who were on the kill floor, were having to deal with the mental trauma of killing animals. Not many stories are told about that, but there's a reality there that still needs to be, the narrative needs to be really brought out on that too.
Okay, and I just ask everybody not to type just during this, only because it gives us feedback. But let me ask you this, Ryan. You're a macho man, you are a bodybuilder, you're a tough guy. So many men equate being a tough guy with eating animals, but I can't imagine a tougher guy than you. What do you tell them? Because I think for a lot of men, one of the biggest fears is that they're going to become somehow emasculated.
Yeah, I think from just a basic, like real easy standpoint, you can talk to another macho man about simply just consuming enough calories when in transition, when they're curious about it. And, you know, if they're at all open to a deeper level, and going back to what you were just talking about, how we treat our animals is a direct reflection of how we treat others. 100%. So in no way would I not agree with you that these workers are very traumatized working in these factories, killing all these animals. And I can tell you that because, like I spoke of, I lived a very different life when I was younger, and that's very traumatizing.
Look at this image. I mean, this is the commercials will describe happy pigs rollicking. This is actually a lot of space for a pig, but this is their life. They actually spray paint them. They paint them with different numbers. It's the level of sadism. This is a pig who is just too sick to stand as she's being dragged to slaughter. There is another pig fighting, going to slaughter. Here are some cows who've been abandoned, tossed on a dead pile. They don't need the boys in the dairy industry. If they don't put them in veal crates, they just toss them. A lot of animals end up on the dead pile. You know, it's not pleasant. I don't enjoy showing those images. It upsets me. It never gets any easier, but people are having a real disconnect, Joe, Enriquez, Henry, with Forward Latino. You're in Iowa, and I think people are people. Compassion grows everywhere, including Iowa. But when people think their livelihoods are endangered, sometimes they will be inclined to turn a blind eye. But then again, plenty of consumers who eat those animals also turn a blind eye. So I don't want to single out any geographic location. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Jane, it takes education, but at the same time, we also know it's very clear that many young people are realizing the value of eating plant-based foods. So this is not difficult for the younger generation, but clearly this is a matter of education. That's why we're doing a boycott right now. We started on May 1st to begin this national boycott, which has gone worldwide, to educate the public, consumers, about to not eat meat because of the abuse that's caused at these slaughterhouses, and that having vigils, protest in front of these facilities is very important, and those are happening across the country and other places around the world. So education is key, but clearly the facts are with us on this about the danger of meat and the abuse at these slaughterhouses.
So I want to just ask two more before we wrap up, get to one of the key articles here. Small farmers left behind in the Trump administration's relief package. This is an NBC News story. I'll just read the first line. Congress authorized a multi-billion-dollar bailout for farms suffering losses because of the COVID pandemic and left the Agriculture Department to work out how the money was spent. When the program was rolled out 2 months later, Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue said, it's $16 billion, 16 billion taxpayer dollars in direct payments would be a lifeline for farmers, but that's not what happened. An NBC News analysis of 700,000 payments said essentially it was marked by structural changes, and the corporate farms got the big payments, even foreign-owned corporations, but not the small farmers. And for those who think vegans are somehow against small farmers, no, we want to help farmers get out of the jam they are in and be able to farm just without animals. Animal-free farming is what we are working towards. They are also being exploited. As one brilliant systems analyst said, we are all being factory farmed. The consumers are being factory farmed to eat the bad food, to get sick, so the pharmaceutical industry can sell them all the myriad of pills they wouldn't need if they were on a plant-based diet, from cholesterol-lowering pills to erectile dysfunction pills and all of the pills that are related to preventable diseases and reversible diseases with a plant-based diet. And they're also factory farming the farmers, turning them into indentured servants, putting them in horrible loans and terrible contracts that they're having a real hard time dealing with. So as you get back full circle, Ryan, to where you began in the cattle industry as a child, do you see that we could form a bond with ranchers and farmers, so-called farmers, who are really becoming indentured servants operating giant warehouses filled with animals who never see the sky?
Yeah, I think is the direction that I've really thought the transition would be easy to make is simply just remove the animals from the equation and focus more on the foods that we're feeding the animals that a lot of times we also consume as humans, like corn, wheat, different grains, and those types of food that most of go to the animal agriculture industry, and it would just be so much more efficient and of course way more ethical to both non-humans and humans, like we're speaking of in the factory farms. So I think that's the direction that we all need to go in and work on, just farming more foods that go directly to the humans, take the animals out of the equation.
Absolutely. We need to take the animals out of the equation. We need to transition the farmers. I'll give you an example. Just recently here in California, a farmer who was contractually supposed to gas all of his hens, tens and tens and tens of thousands of them. I don't want to give you an exact number. He didn't want to do it. What happens is, and this is why people should realize that eggs are not any kinder. In fact, they involve 2 deaths. They involve all the male chicks are macerated, ground up alive, because the egg industry doesn't need male chicks because male chicks can't produce eggs. So they're literally ground up alive. And there's documentaries about this. And then when the hens get to be about 2 years old or even younger, when they are considered spent, they are not producing eggs as rapidly as they had been, even though they could live many years longer. They're supposed to be gassed en masse. That's a depopulation that happens despite COVID. There's other COVID depopulations, which are anything but euthanasia. Slowly asphyxiating animals, and they're writhing without oxygen, and then any who are still alive are shot in the head. It's a horror show. It's something out of a Freddy Krueger movie. Anyway, the farmer called the sanctuaries in California and said, come and get them. I don't want to kill these animals. And as he was carrying the hens to the trucks that the sanctuaries brought, he said, this is a liberation. The farmer himself. Joe, final thoughts on that.
The truth of this needs to be told over and over again. I mean, we've heard about this. We've heard about this with livestock farmers. The amount of slaughtering that's going on right now at their own farms due to the way that the corporations are treating them. These farmers do not make that much. These livestock farmers, on the average, only get paid about $15 a hog for raising them in these confinement centers. These confinement centers have changed the way in which farmers have done things. In Iowa, for example, in the mid 1990s, we went from 80,000 livestock farmers when it came to hogs to only 10,000 due to these corporate farms. So things need to change. Farmers need to look at livestock in a different way, need to look at plant-based farming. That needs to be the key. We need to move forward.
Okay, I want to show you, by the way, this is one of the chickens that was rescued from that farmer who said, come and get them. And you can see her beak is cut off and most of her feathers are gone. And they all had worms and other problems. So that's not very appetizing. Chicken wings don't fall from the sky. They come from individuals who suffer horrifically. This is a rescued pig, rescued from the horrors of factory farms. This is not how they live in the factory farms. But for anybody who thinks, oh, this is nonsense, I want to play a little bit of a video that's about 30 seconds to kind of try to get to people's hearts.
Say, I'm clean. I'm clean. Sleepy eyes. Now it's bedtime. Night night. Night night.
I'm about to join you in there.
Okay, so that's how animals should be treated. Those are animals rescued from factory farming. And of course, I showed you some of the imagery of those same animals and, you know, how they're treated on these high-speed slaughter lines. It's morally reprehensible. That's all I can tell you. It is morally wrong. Anybody who doesn't think it's morally wrong, I think needs to maybe really have a talk with themselves, because it clearly is. So, time to change. So finally, go to BoycottMeat.com, sign up. Individuals can sign up, Joe?
Yes, they can. Right on the homepage, BoycottMeat.com. Sign up right there. Also, consider making a donation too. We'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. And Ryan, would you consider joining BoycottMeat.com?
I would love to join and support BoycottMeat.com. So yes, absolutely.
Okay, so go to Boycott Meat and sign up. Okay, Ryan? We'd love to
All
have
right,
you.
sounds good.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for a very great conversation. If you're watching at home, please boycott meat, rule number 1, and share this out so that other people who really don't understand can really get the full picture of how human beings and animals and the planet, all of those beings and nature are being exploited. We can do better. Thank you again. Talk soon on our next Boycott Meat Roundtable.
Thank you.
Thank you.